It's been almost a year and a half since I first talked about Pigface, a grungy, grimy little indie game demo I was playing at the time. And now that the game just released in early access, I figured it was time to jump back in for a little bit more filth. If you weren't around when I made that video or just want a refresher, Pigface plays sort of like a more open-ended 3D Hotline Miami. You start the game by waking up with what's basically a bomb collar on your neck, and Jigsaw,
hello exit,
or some mysterious guy tells you that you work for him now. So you're inducted into this criminal organization and sent out on various missions to do their dirty work and possibly earn your freedom. The core gameplay loop from Hotline Miami is still there. Go into some decaying complex, take out everyone in sight, and maybe pick up an item or two to complete your objectives. And of course, both you and your rivals can drop in a matter of seconds, and that usually means about 2 bullets for them and only slightly more for you. But these aren't your standard stormtrooper-esque enemies. They're actually very accurate at range and have super quick reflexes coming around corners. You could run into each level guns blazing and try to take them all on at once, but that rarely works out. Instead, you're better off approaching each scenario a little more methodically, clearing out areas from afar or luring enemies into advantageous positions where you're less exposed are always good choices. You can also use stealth to some degree, but it isn't a completely viable option like you might expect. For instance, crouch walking around will never let you get close enough to melee an enemy, even if you're behind them the entire time. Once you're within a certain radius, they're instantly going to snap towards you and fill you full of lead, unless they're a melee enemy, which don't pose nearly as much of a threat as the gun-wielding ones. And despite being super dangerous up close, once you're far enough away, your opponents are basically mindless chicken. Getting a scoped weapon with a silencer virtually makes you unstoppable as long as you keep your distance. You can shoot an enemy, knocking them off their feet, and they'll just stand back up and wander around wondering where it came from. Speaking of which, I really love how the enemies ragdoll when you hit them and then get back up to fight some more. On rare occasions, some of them will even blast off a few rounds while they're actively ragdolling, which could make for a hilariously unfortunate game over. But back on the topic of AI, one guy could be a foot away from his friend whose head just exploded and he won't really care at all. Altogether, it's a classic case of that must have been the wind school of enemy AI. Most gun-wielding enemies are extremely dangerous up close, but they're little more than target practice if you keep your distance. And obviously the game is aware of this because a good amount of enemies are placed in tiny houses and tight corridors, so you can't exploit this tactic for the whole level. Basically all of my deaths in close calls in Pigface were to enemies coming around corners and instantly blasting me from 5 feet away, which is totally fine. I mean, you adapt your strategies and the game starts flowing pretty nicely. But seriously, buy a scoped weapon ASAP and the game becomes dramatically easier. Or don't do that and go wild with a shotgun on tight corners. It's definitely a lot more exhilarating. Speaking of which, there's a whole kit system where you purchase items online and then choose which ones to start each mission with. It's cool seeing the wide variety of guns, tools, masks, and other gear you can unlock to approach each level differently, but I never really felt like I had to make tough decisions on what to buy. Each mission awards a couple $1,000s with optional bonuses, meaning you can buy 2 fully upgraded guns or like 100 melee weapons per mission. And this isn't just buying the guns for a single mission like I originally thought when I saw these prices. Instead, buying an item permanently unlocks it as a selectable option for every mission going forward. So by the time I finished the 5 early access missions, I had about 80% of the items unlocked without even replaying any levels. Of course, this could change as more expensive items show up later in the story, but I was pretty surprised with how cheap everything was, especially since the game lets you replay levels for additional cash. You'd quickly own every item in the game if you just wanted to replay like 2 levels. The kit system paired with the large open-ended levels reminded me a lot of the Hitman series, which is a big plus. Letting players approach each level how they want, even if that means that a lot of them will just snipe every enemy, is a cool thing, and I wish more indies embrace this sort of open-ended design. I should probably mention that the story, while bare bones for right now, does seem to be building towards something bigger, but at the moment it's just enough set dressing to get you into these various grungy environments to blast hordes of bad guys in the manner of your choosing. And while the music does have a little drive to it, I feel like it's oddly quiet and hidden away from the rest of the game. If you ask anyone who likes Hotline Miami what set the game apart from other top-down shooters, music is obviously going to be one of the main answers. And the Hotline Miami devs really let their music take center stage, often pumping it out just as loud as the in-game sound effects. Pigface does take some cues from its predecessor in using music to amp up the tension, but it's so quiet and subdued that it doesn't have nearly the same effect. Then again, almost all of Hotline Miami's music was licensed from semi-popular indie artists, which definitely couldn't have been cheap. I wouldn't expect most games to have a soundtrack that meaty, but I think Pigface could do well by amping up the music bit down the line. I haven't talked too much about the visuals so far, but the grimy aesthetic with dirty photo textures is well done, even if some areas were rather bare. On the other hand, it does have some nice views from a distance, often reminding me of old Source games, and especially Half-Life 2. I mean, come on, just look at this. Does this not look like a shot straight out of Highway 17? And hey, I'm not saying that in a negative way at all. I grew up playing tons of old Source games and grungy PS2 shooters that Pigface would fit right in with. All in all, I had a good time with this one, even if there's only about 5 levels and 1 to 2 hours of content in the early access so far. There's obviously going to be a lot more levels down the line, but I'm interested in seeing how they up the complexity of the game too. I'll leave a link to the Steam page down below for those who want to pick it up or maybe even wishlist it for later. Little aside, but I did plan on having this video out a lot earlier since I got my hands on a pre-release key. But I ran into a particularly nasty crash every single time I played the second level, so I couldn't actually record all of it. But huge thanks to the dev for fixing that issue right before the game released, and I haven't seen any other crashes since. That's a major crisis averted for sure, but you'd actually be surprised how often this happens. Despite my inbox being spammed with game keys, I don't usually play that many games pre-release. But of the few that I do play, I'd say at least half of them have had some major issue that got fixed right before the game officially came out. And being on the other side, also developing games, I know how catastrophic release issues can be, so I usually reach out to the devs and work with them to try and get it fixed. Anyways, that's not really relevant to the video. I just thought some people might be interested in hearing what goes on behind the scenes before a game officially comes out. If you've ever played a terribly buggy game on release day, just know that the version a week before that was far, far worse, and the devs have been panicking every day since. But on that positive note, I'm gonna say that Pigface was cool, and I'm definitely gonna jump back in later in development. So thanks for stopping by, folks. I hope to see you all in the next one.